The alarm pierced through the quiet hum of Station Kepler-7, a multi-species outpost floating in the neutral zone between 4 major galactic territories. Commander Vexthera, a Corthonian with iridescent scales and 3 compound eyes, bolted upright from her rest cycle, her communicator already flashing emergency red. Within seconds, the station's central command was flooded with frantic reports from every sector. Every single juvenile, cub, hatchling, and kit aboard the station had vanished without a trace. In the Meridian sector, Ambassador Tokala of the Velothian Empire stood frozen in her family quarters, staring at the empty sleeping pod where her daughter, barely 3 cycles old, should have been dreaming. Her crystalline wings trembled as she activated her neural link, broadcasting her distress across every available channel. 2 decks below, Engineer Kervin discovered his twin hatchlings missing from their thermal nest, their favorite toys still arranged in perfect order. The Zephyrian's 6 limbs shook as he stumbled into the corridor, mandibles clicking in panic. Within minutes, 73 young ones from 12 different species were confirmed missing. The station's AI, Iris, initiated full lockdown protocols. Blast doors sealed. Environmental systems switched to high alert. Every sensor, every camera, every biometric scanner began searching for any sign of the children. Commander Vexthera's command center became a storm of activity as representatives from each species converged, their voices rising in accusation and fear. The Thalaxians have always coveted our young for their psychic potential, hissed Ambassador Tokala, her wings flaring defensively. The accused Thalaxian delegate, a being of pure luminescent energy, contained within a crystalline suit, pulsed angry crimson. Absurd. Your kind accused us of the same thing during the treaty negotiations. Perhaps this is your ploy to restart that conflict. Commander Vexthera slammed her 4-fingered hand against the command console. Enough. Iris report. Any signs of breach, forced entry, or unauthorized transport activity. The AI's voice resonated through the chamber, calm despite the chaos. Negative. Commander, all external airlocks sealed. No unauthorized shuttle departures. No transporter activity detected. Internal sensors show no signs of struggle or distress signals from any of the missing juveniles. The mystery deepened with each passing minute. How could 73 children simply vanish from a lockdown space station? The Velothians suspected the Corthonians suspected the Zephyrians suspected everyone, and slowly, inevitably, suspicious eyes turned toward the human delegation. Lieutenant Marcus Webb stood in the corner of the command center, his arms crossed, watching the accusations fly with growing concern. Beside him, Chief Science Officer Rena Kapoor adjusted her glasses nervously. "They're going to blame us," she whispered. "They always do when something goes wrong." She wasn't entirely wrong. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Coalition, admitted only 3 standard years ago after decades of observation and debate. They were still the unknown quantity, the species that didn't quite fit the predictable patterns of galactic society. Their emotional capacity unnerved some species, their adaptability worried others, and their tendency to form bonds across species lines was viewed with equal parts fascination and suspicion. "The humans were seen in multiple sectors today," growled Kervin, his compound eyes fixed on Marcus. "My hatchlings were fascinated by their stories, perhaps too fascinated." Marcus stepped forward, his voice steady, despite the weight of dozens of alien gazers. "My team has been conducting cultural exchange sessions. Yes, story time for interested families. It's part of our diplomatic mandate. But we would never." "Iris," Commander Vexthera interrupted, her middle eye narrowing. "Location of all human personnel aboard the station." The AI responded instantly. "All 47 human crew members are accounted for, 32 in their assigned quarters, 15 in common areas or on duty stations." The commander's scales rippled with thought. "Show me thermal scans of the human residential sector." The main view screen shifted to display a heat signature overlay of the station's layout. The human quarters, a converted cargo bay they'd transformed into a communal living space, glowed with an unusual concentration of heat signatures, far more than 32 humans should generate. IRIS's voice took on a note of what might have been confusion, if an AI could express such a thing. "Commander, I'm detecting approximately 120 life signs in the human quarters, 73 of which match the biometric profiles of the missing juveniles." The command center fell silent. Ambassador Tokala was the first to break it, her voice sharp with accusation. "They have taken our children." Commander Vexthera held up a hand. "Security Team Alpha, proceed to human quarters. Non-lethal protocols. I want visual confirmation before we make assumptions. And humans," she fixed Marcus with all three eyes, "you will accompany us." The corridor to the human residential sector felt longer than Marcus remembered. Commander Vexthera led the security team, her plasma rifle set to stun, though her trigger finger remained carefully away from the firing mechanism. Behind them, a growing crowd of anxious parents pressed forward, held back by additional security personnel. Maya Chen, one of the human engineers, met them at the entrance to their quarters, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Commander, what's happening? We heard the alarms but assumed it was a drill." "Step aside," Vexthera commanded, though not unkindly. "We're entering your quarters." Maya blinked in confusion, but moved out of the way. The security team entered first, weapons raised, scanning for threats. What they found stopped them in their tracks. The humans had converted their assigned space into something that resembled a cross between a library, a garden, and a massive sleeping den. Soft bioluminescent plants from a dozen worlds provided gentle light. Cushions, blankets, and what humans called beanbags were scattered everywhere. And in the center of it all, in carefully arranged clusters, humans slept peacefully, each one cradling one or more alien children. Dev Patel, a xenobiologist, had his arms wrapped protectively around two Corthonian hatchlings, their scales glimmering softly against his brown skin. The hatchlings' small arms clutched at his shirt, their faces peaceful in sleep. Nearby, Kenji Yamamoto held a Velothian kit whose wings were tucked against the human's chest, rising and falling with his breath. The crystalline child's natural glow pulsed in rhythm with Kenji's heartbeat, a synchronization that should have been biologically impossible. Everywhere the security team looked, they saw the same scene repeated. Humans and alien children, sleeping together in perfect trust and contentment. Some children had clearly crawled onto their human companions during sleep. Others were deliberately positioned, as if the humans had been reading to them and they'd simply drifted off together. Not a single child showed signs of distress. In fact, many looked more peaceful than their parents had ever seen them. Commander Vexthera lowered her weapon, her scales flushing through colors that indicated profound confusion. "Iris," she said softly, "review security footage from the past 6 hours. I want to see how this happened." The AI complied, projecting holographic playback onto the nearest wall. The footage told a story that none of the assembled aliens had expected. It began 3 hours after the station's communal dinner, during what humans called story time. Marcus had been in the station's recreation center, surrounded by a mixed group of adults and children from various species. He'd been reading from a book, something about a velveteen rabbit, his voice animated and warm. The human concept of reading aloud was still novel to most galactic species, who typically transferred information through neural downloads or sensory immersion. As Marcus read, something remarkable happened. The alien children present initially brought by curious parents began to lean closer. Their eyes widened. Their various sensory organs focused entirely on the human's face and voice. When the story ended, they didn't want to leave. They asked for more, then more. Their parents eventually departed for evening duties, assuming their children would grow bored and return to their quarters. But the children didn't grow bored. As the recreation center emptied, more humans arrived for their own social time. They saw the children and, without any apparent discussion or planning, simply continued entertaining them. Rena taught them hand-clapping games. Maya showed them how to make shadow puppets. Dev let them examine his collection of pressed flowers from different worlds, telling stories about each one. The footage showed the children becoming drowsy as the station's artificial night cycle progressed. One Zephyrian kit yawned, its mandibles drooping. A human lieutenant Sarah Kim noticed and did something that made the assembled aliens gasp. She simply picked up the kit and began gently rocking it, humming a soft melody. The kit's 6 limbs curled inward, and within moments, it was asleep in her arms. As if this were a signal, other children began showing signs of tiredness, and the humans, without hesitation, without consultation, without any apparent concern for the diplomatic implications, began comforting them. They picked them up. They held them close. They whispered soothing nonsense words. They stroked scales, smoothed feathers, and carefully avoided stepping on tails. And one by one, the children fell asleep. "We should take them back to their quarters," someone had suggested in the footage. her voice barely audible. But Marcus had shaken his head. "Look at them. They're comfortable, safe. Let's just stay with them until they wake up naturally. We can contact their parents then." So the humans had done something that, in hindsight, was both completely logical and entirely unprecedented. They'd carried the sleeping children back to their own quarters, the largest communal space on the station, arranged them in comfortable positions, and simply laid down beside them to sleep, making sure each child had a human protector nearby, making sure none would wake up alone or afraid. The security footage ended. In the present, Commander Vextera stared at the sleeping tableau before her, her scales cycling through colors that indicated profound cognitive recalibration. Behind her, Ambassador Tokola had tears streaming down her crystalline face. They just took care of them," she whispered like it was the most natural thing in the world. Engineer Kervin's mandibles clicked softly. "My hatchlings, look how peaceful they are." It was at that moment that one of the children began to stir. A small Corthonian hatchling, barely old enough to have full-scale coloration, opened its eyes and found itself surrounded by unfamiliar walls and concerned adult faces. Its mouth opened to cry out in fear, but Dev, still mostly asleep himself, simply tightened his arms slightly and murmured, "Little one, you're safe. Everyone's here." The hatchling looked up at the human's face, considered for a moment, then nestled back against his chest and closed its eyes again. That simple interaction seemed to break something in the assembled aliens, or perhaps it opened something. Parents began moving forward, no longer with suspicion but with something like wonder. Commander Vextera held up a hand. "Slowly," she cautioned. "Let's not wake them all at once. IRIS, compile a full report on human physiology. I want to know if there's a biological explanation for this." Over the next hour, as the station's artificial dawn began to brighten, the children slowly woke. Some cried when they realized they were being taken from their human companions. Others went reluctantly, looking back with confused expressions. A few had to be gently pried away from humans who were equally reluctant to let them go. The station's command center became a very different kind of chaos in the hours that followed. Scientists from a dozen species requested permission to study the phenomenon. The Velothian xenobiologist, Dr. Shaltara, presented preliminary findings that suggested humans emitted low-level pheromones that had a calming effect on juvenile members of most oxygen-breathing species. The Corthenian neuroscientist, Professor Kexter, proposed that human vocal patterns triggered instinctive trust responses in young beings across the evolutionary spectrum. But it was the Thalaxian delegate, that being of contained energy, who perhaps understood it best. "It is not merely biological." They pulsed in colors that translated to thoughtful observation. "Humans possess something we have analyzed incorrectly. We thought their emotional capacity was a liability, a weakness that would hinder them in galactic society. We failed to understand that the same trait that makes them cry at stories and rage at injustice also makes them instinctively protect and comfort the vulnerable, not just their own young." All young. Commander Vexthara sat in her office, reviewing the incident reports and the flood of requests from parents asking if their children could attend more human story times. She pulled up the station's regulations database and began typing a new entry. Emergency Protocol 847H, she titled it, in the event of juvenile distress, anxiety, or care requirements exceeding normal parameters. Human crew members are authorized to provide emergency comfort protocols. She paused, then added, human quarters may be designated as a safe space for juveniles of all species. Adult supervision by human personnel is approved for cultural exchange and childcare purposes. 3 weeks later, the human residential sector had been officially expanded and redesignated. The sign outside read, in 12 different languages, "The Nest Multi-Species Youth Center." Inside, Marcus sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a mixed group of children from 7 different species, reading from a book about a place called Narnia. Dev was in the corner, teaching Zephyrian hatchlings how to make friendship bracelets. Maya was showing a group of Velothian kits how to grow bean plants in clear cups so they could watch the roots develop. Rena was mediating a dispute between a Corthonian and a Thalaxian over whose turn it was to play with the building blocks. And scattered throughout the space, parents from various species sat in designated observation areas, watching with expressions that ranged from fascination to tears. They were witnessing something that no treaty or alliance could have created: genuine, instinctive, cross-species care. not because of political advantage or diplomatic necessity, but simply because humans saw children who needed comfort and couldn't help but provide it. Lieutenant Commander Jessica Torres, newly appointed director of the Youth Center, stood at the entrance and smiled at the organized chaos. Her communicator chimed with a message from Commander Vextera. Monthly report. Please. The Galactic Council wants data on the program. Jessica glanced at the scene behind her. Kengi Yamamoto had somehow ended up with 4 different species of children asleep on and around him, while he, too, dozed peacefully and began typing her response. Report as follows. 0 incidents. 100% parental approval rating. Request for expansion to accommodate growing waitlist. Notable observation. Human crew member Yamamoto has been adopted by various juveniles as a mobile sleeping surface. He seems unbothered by this development. Recommend official designation as universal nap provider. She paused, then added one more line. Commander, we didn't mean to cause a station-wide emergency. We just saw kids who needed hugs. We're human. We can't help it. That evening, as the station settled into its night cycle, the human quarters, now the nest, held a special sleepover event. Parents had actually requested it, wanting their children to have the experience of sleeping in the safe space that had become legendary on the station. 32 children from 9 different species were carefully arranged in the communal sleeping area, each with a designated human guardian nearby. As the lights dimmed to comfortable darkness, punctuated only by the soft glow of bioluminescent plants, a Corthonian hatchling whispered to Marcus, who was reading one last story by filtered light. Why do humans do this? Take care of children who aren't yours. Marcus considered the question seriously, aware that several other children, and even a few lingering parents, were listening. Well, he said softly, there's an old human saying, it takes a village to raise a child. That means children belong to everyone. In a way, they're our future, all of our futures, and anything small and vulnerable that needs protection and love deserves it, no matter what species they are. That's just being human, I guess. The hatchling thought about this, then curled against Marcus's side. I like humans, it decided sleepily. You're warm and you tell good stories, and you don't mind when I drool on your shirt. Marcus chuckled quietly. No, we don't mind that at all. As sleep claimed children and humans alike. The station's AI, Iris, made a note in its cultural database under human behavior patterns. Humans possess an instinctive protective response to juvenile members of all species. This response overrides concerns of diplomacy, personal comfort, or convenience. Analysis suggests this trait, initially viewed as potential liability, may be humanity's most valuable contribution to galactic society. File classification, asset, not threat. Monitor for continued positive outcomes, and in the darkness of space, aboard a station designed to bring disparate species together. The sound of 70 sleeping beings, human and alien alike, breathing in peaceful synchronization, was the quietest revolution the galaxy had ever known.